Tim Regan, founder here at PrairieView Wealth Partners. Welcome to this month's edition of our market update and commentary. I want to take just a couple of minutes to give you some of our insight into what we think is going to happen in the markets going forward and what has taken place here in the last month or so. But before I do, I'd like to share with you, my kids and I were talking over dinner the other night, and one of them showed me something I think they saw on TikTok. And it had somebody talking, acting like they were God, talking to his personal assistant. And God says to his personal assistant, as we're looking forward to the next decade, did you get all the calamities scheduled for the 2020s like we talked about yesterday? And the personal assistant kind of got this crazy look on their face and said, I'm sorry, I goofed up and I scheduled all that for 2020. And God kind of looks and shakes his head. And I think that for us, it was just a commentary on where we're feeling, what we're feeling like right now. 2020 has been a heck of a year, to say the least, as we all know, right? We've all lived it. And as we look at that and look backwards on that year, we're feeling like, in our perspective, that there is a lot that has changed, both personally, professionally, but really globally, right? Whether you introduce things like pandemic, you talk about all of the hurricanes, the forest fires, the natural disasters we've seen in this country. We've seen some global unrest and some international types of things going on. And as we look at that, part of what PrairieView is focused on is trying to look and say, you know, God has been here before. God has led his people through different things before, and this and the things we faced in 2020 will be no different. Thinking back, and we were fortunate at church, we had gone through reading a book called The Red Sea Rules, and it talks about how to deal with uncertainty and looking at how God led the Israelites through the Red Sea, right as he was leading them into the wilderness. And as we did, it talks about things and how do you address uncertainty in your life. And as I was reading that and reflecting a little bit on our lives today, I thought, you know, what better perspective is there to recognize that the same God that led the Israelites out of Egypt, the same God that led us through world wars, the same God that has led this country through depressions and the global financial crisis and gone down the list, is the same God that will continue to be in charge and continue to lead us. Now, that being said, there's some very practical things that he has given us as tools so that we can help manage through that. And so that's what we're here to talk a little bit about today, is we're going to talk about what are the things that we're seeing inside of the financial markets and inside of the economy that we think are going to be keys in how we make decisions going forward. So let's talk a little bit about what did we see take place over the course of the last 30 to 60 days. I mean, obviously, we've got now a new president-elect, so that's a pretty big change. But beyond that, what we've seen is an economy that has been extremely resilient, kind of surprisingly so, in the face of this pandemic. Part of that, we believe, is because of the intense amount of focus that's been put on it by the federal government and some of the stimulus measures that they took and put into place right at the beginning of the pandemic starting out. Right now, we're seeing that those stimulus packages are starting to wane a little bit, meaning the effects of them, but it is still a huge thumb that we have on the scale of the financial markets. When you think about how much money was pumped into the economy, that is not allowing the economy to look like it normally would because of all of the stimulus that's there. As I say that, we're looking now at a situation where we're thinking another stimulus package will be passed. There's some pretty good negotiating going on, taking place right now. Our opinion is that probably doesn't happen right away. We probably see another 30 to 60 days potentially before that happens. Now, we could be completely wrong. We don't have any inside track there. That's just kind of what our thought would be. How does that affect your investments, and how does that affect the things that we are doing to manage your money? So what we've seen is that the markets have actually rebounded tremendously. You know, November saw the greatest increase since about 1950. So that's one heck of a good recovery. We saw international stocks outperform domestic stocks, and which was somewhat to be expected. If you recall, back a couple of months ago, we had increased our allocation to international because we had anticipated some of that taking place. What we've done over the last 5 to 6 months since the pandemic was really kind of starting out, and maybe it's a little longer, 7 months or so now, We had started moving your portfolios a little bit more conservative as we saw the increased likelihood of a correction coming in the financial markets. That ended up not necessarily being the case. We saw a lot of volatility, but the markets have actually grown through the pandemic, not retreated. And so what we're seeing now is a lower likelihood of a major correction. We're seeing the economics inside of the US and globally starting to improve. Now, when I say starting to improve, know that that is not saying that we're in great shape. The last numbers that I saw showed that we had about 780,000 people in unemployment. To put that into perspective, during the highest points inside the global financial crisis, that number was around 670,000. So we've got a lot of people still looking for work, a lot of people that are still hurting. However, we are seeing the economics starting to improve, and we're seeing the likelihood of a major correction starting to recede a little bit or go away a little bit. Therefore, you can expect here in the next week or so a bit of a change inside of your portfolios. If we are actively managing your portfolio on your behalf, you're going to see that we're going to start going back to a risk neutral position. What that means is that we're going to add a little bit of stock to the portfolio. We had taken away some of that risk during the highest points of the pandemic, meaning the highest risk points of the pandemic. Now that we're seeing that risk start to go away, we're going to go back to a more risk neutral position, and we're going to start adding some equities back into the portfolio. We anticipate going forward that news like vaccines that are coming out, the idea of a second round of stimulus for the economy, seeing people that are becoming a little bit more aware of how do they live within this pandemic situation is going to start to continue to stabilize markets, and that's where we're going to add a little bit of risk back into the portfolio. Hopefully, we pray that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and are looking forward to a Christmas season that might be a little bit different this year, but that finds yourself surrounded by your family and your friends. We wish you well, and we'll talk soon.